Arifi.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate you. So today I'm going to be presenting our work on features of academic writing and false detection of AI text generation in English as a foreign language students. So I completed this research with my coworkers, Ms. Hems Hashim, Ms. Dana Alzahid, Dr. Hanadi Abdussalam, and Dr. Maura Pilotti. We are at the Cognitive Sciences Research Center at Prince Mohammed bin Fahd University in Saudi Arabia. So first, of course, I'm going to address what AI text generators are, since we're basically looking at assessments of whether text has been generated by AI in written comprehension courses. So we all know at this point that there's basically a concept of large language model functionality in which text generation, pardon me, it's very late, in which these generators such as ChatGPT are trained on extraordinarily vast um, forgive me, I'm sorry. There's a very strange echo. Extraordinary, they're trained, forgive me. In LLM functionalities, they're trained on extraordinarily vast data sets of different types of writing, be it human generated or AI generated. And this allows them to have incredible capabilities such as translations and summarization. However, what they're most commonly known for is actually generating text in response to human prompts. And these texts are generally accurate, informative, and both lexically, semantically, grammatically coherent. And of course, for some educators of written composition courses, this can be a little bit of a concern that they are not always being used ethically. So as such, it is important for us to understand that there are specific features that go along with AI-generated text. The first of these that I'm going to mention is called burstiness, and the second is perplexity. These are kind of like artifacts that have not been able to be gotten completely removed from AI-generated text to make it as human-like as actually possible. So burstiness basically means repetition. Burstiness means that words are used over and over within small clusters, such as within a paragraph. The same word will be used repeatedly. At the sentence level, burstiness means that the same form of sentence structure is used basically throughout an entire piece of generated text. Perplexity pretty much only occurs at the sentence level because it refers to predictability. And what it generally refers to with generated text is the predictability of lexical sequencing. What word is statistically most likely to follow the next? So of course, because of this, we have AI-generated text detection programs. And these are very commonly used by instructors who are concerned that their students may be not actually completing assignments themselves, not actually improving their own compositional skills, but are instead relying on AI text generators to produce their work. Now, these generators are not great, just to put it that way. They're not great. They are not very strong, especially the ones that are readily available, that are free, and that are used by most instructors. And one of the reasons for this is they rely extremely heavily on detecting perplexity, detecting things that are statistically likely to be produced in a sequence, in a sentence. And the reason for this is that it is presumed that humans tend to produce writing that is a little bit more creative in their selection of vocabulary items. And that the predictability that is seen in AI-generated text is all relying on statistics from the vast array of material on which they were trained. It also does slightly rely on burstiness, and in this case, it tends to be focused pretty much on vocabulary diversity, particularly within the paragraph unit. And this is because humans are believed to be more creative and have more variety in our vocabulary. So because of this, there is often a risk of false detection of AI-generated text whenever students submit a piece of their own composition. And this has actually been found to penalize two groups that unfortunately can intersect. So one of the first groups that are more likely to be unfairly judged to have used AI-generated text when they are in fact submitting their own work are English as a foreign language learners. This is often because of the fact that they have been taught very formulaic structure types, so they appear to have a low level of perplexity, meaning not a lot of variability in the type of sentence structures that they produce. They also are more likely to have a limited vocabulary, and with just fewer words in their vocabulary, they're more likely to have to repeat themselves. So because of this, the same words will appear over and over within short units, such as the paragraph, basically mimicking the burstiness that is found in AI-generated text. The other group that is found to be more likely to be falsely accused of submitting AI-generated text is higher achieving students. And this basically means that students who are producing work that is containing subject-specific terminology and writing in a concise and direct way, as is appropriate for academic writing, are more likely to be considered to be using the feature of burstiness because they'll be using subject-specific terminology for which there really are no good synonyms. And they will be writing in a similar type of sentence structure consistently, as academic writing truly does require conciseness. So now, because of this, we wanted to look into the rate of false detection in handwritten essays produced by English as a foreign language learners in a group of university students here in Saudi Arabia. And what we used were these 7 programs that detect whether content is AI or human generated. They have all been trained on both human and AI generated material and have been shown to be used very frequently and very regularly by instructors of English composition courses due to the fact that they are extremely easy to access. So what we did was we took 90 handwritten exams, final exams for a written communications course, and we took just the essay writing portion. And we took those that scored grades of 9 out of 10 and above, just the essay. The median portion that scored between 75 and 85, and then low scoring essays that scored below a 70 or below. And what we found was that we did a paired sample repeated measures ANOVA. And what we found was that members of the high scoring group, these papers that were found to earn a grade of 90% or above, actually were significantly more likely to be determined to have been produced by AI than either the median scoring group or the low scoring group. And then, interestingly enough, there's no difference between how often those in the median scoring group and the low scoring group were found to have been inaccurately judged as having been produced by AI. So what we ended up deciding to do was think about what is causing these high-scoring papers, handwritten essays, to be judged to be AI generated, whereas these other essays are not. So what we decided to do was then look at specific linguistic features in high-scoring essays and low-scoring essays. And for the purposes of this study, we combined anything from, we excluded the median group altogether and kept only high-scoring essays, which were 90% and above, and low-scoring essays, which were 65% and below, which is considered failing at the institution at which this study took place. So for this, we had just one main research question, which was, do differences in linguistic features of handwritten essays exist between high and low scoring groups? And what we were really interested in was if the features of these handwritten essays differ primarily at the word level, the sentence level, or the essay level. So essentially, not just do differences exist, but what kind of differences exist? What is actually leading to these false identification and false detection of AI generation between these two groups? So our first hypothesis was pretty obviously that differences in features would be found between the essays in the high and the low scoring group. And this, of course, goes back to the research that shows that both EFL learners and high achieving students are more likely to be inaccurately judged as having used AI text generation when compared to their lower scoring peers or to native speakers of English. And of course, this is based on our previous research from the study I've just shown you, where we found that the higher scoring handwritten essays did in fact find higher detection rates. Our second hypothesis was that differences would be most likely to be found at the sentence level as compared to features at either the word or the full essay level. And this is due to the fact that these AI detection programs focus so heavily on perplexity, and sentences are really the only level that is tested that can be measured in terms of perplexity. So perplexity, of course, remember, is predictability. And predictability and burstiness, meaning in this case at the sentence level, repetition of the same sentence structure, are very strong features of AI-generated text. And it is the text, and perplexity itself is the feature that AI detection software most heavily relies upon when determining whether a piece of text is more likely to be human or AI generated. So in order to actually test our hypotheses, we used the Text Evaluator tool, which is designed by the Educational Testing Service in the United States. This tool allows us to upload a piece of text, and it is then analyzed in terms of both quantitative and qualitative features. So quantitative features, as you can see in the box on the left, include things like the total number of words, words per sentence, the average words per paragraph, etc. Whereas then the qualitative measures include things like vocabulary complexity, word unfamiliarity, like are these words more likely to be used in everyday speech or less familiar, less common? Lexical cohesion, how well are ideas conveyed across from one paragraph to another and within the same paragraph. So this allowed us to test at various levels how these the essays in these two different groups were really produced. So now our findings showed that at the quantitative level, there were no significant differences between the grade level or the total number of words that were produced by either of the two groups. And what's great about that is it shows us that these two groups are pretty comparable when it comes to English language proficiency. They're still both being written at a similar grade level, and they're also producing essays of similar length. Where they differ, though, in their quantitative features is the total number of sentences produced and the number of words per sentences. So you'll notice that the number of words per sentence is generally much shorter in the higher scoring group, and that the total number of sentences is generally larger, significantly larger in the higher scoring group, which means it is very likely that their sentences are much more concise, meaning that they also are more likely to be slightly more formulaic and structured than would be allowed if they were longer sentences, as shorter sentences do not really allow for as much creativity. Another interesting difference, if we go down to the qualitative features, is that word unfamiliarity was something that differed quite strongly between the two groups. And now this is actually very interesting because AI text generator programs are actually much more likely to choose an available synonym that is less common, even down to the level of if someone is writing in the word math and then puts it into an AI paraphrasing program, it would change that word to mathematics to try and present the image of a slightly elevated level of knowledge. Additionally, degree of narrativity was lower for higher scoring essays. Narrativity is basically a casual conversational style of writing. So at the essay level and at the word level, we are finding differences in the features of these two different groups of essays. So going back to our hypotheses, our first hypothesis was that significant differences in the feature of writing will be found between these two groups. And as we saw from the table before, this was supported. Writers from both groups were, of course, as we already stated, a comparable level of proficiency, as there were no significant differences in the grade level or total number of words used. But the differences in both the quantitative and the qualitative features were present in terms of the total number of sentences and words per sentence, meaning conciseness, as well as the word unfamiliarity and the degree of narrativity, which leads to greater formality of writing, as is typical of higher scoring and more accurate academic writing. Our second hypothesis was that differences would primarily be found at the sentence level as compared to features at the word or essay level. And again, this was because of the fact that perplexity is the main focus of the AI text generation detection tools that are most frequently used by educators. And that, of course, only affects the sentence level. However, what we found was that this is not, in fact, supported. In fact, there are differences at the word level, the sentence level, and the essay level as well. So, of course, we had the quantitative features accounting for conciseness at the sentence level, but we also had word unfamiliarity at the word level and the degree of narrativity, or how conversational or formal the essay was written, the style in which the essay was written. So there are a few different applications that we could use that can be made from these findings. The first of which, of course, is instructor training. We are very quick as instructors these days to jump to the assumption that students we don't know or that students could not possibly be writing as well as they are, and that we should immediately jump to checking all work for possible AI generation. However, if instructors were trained as to what AI-generated text actually looks like, what perplexity and burstiness actually look like, this may prevent us from unfairly penalizing EFL learners who are in fact, just very high-performing students. Another important application is that we could start to adopt clearly defined institution-wide policies regarding generative AI use. This would allow not only for teachers to become more involved in understanding generative AI use, but also for putting programs in place to help students learn how to use AI as an effective tool, similarly to how they use a calculator as an effective tool for conducting mathematical computations. This in turn would then lead them to be less likely to abuse generative AI and instead use it in a way that would allow them to learn and be able to write more effectively and efficiently. Also, this can help us to understand that the free programs that are available and are easily accessible are causing more harm than good. And perhaps we can use this to encourage institutions to invest in a high-quality AI detection program that has been trained on a more targeted data set. This would actually significantly decrease the amount of false detections found by instructors when examining written compositions submitted by their students. Of course, there are several limitations that lead to the possibility of future work. So, for example, in this study, we only tested 59 handwritten essays. A larger set of handwritten essays would allow us to look for a much larger set of features and a much more diverse range of features than we were able to find with just the 59 tests that were used. Additionally, we should be doing some tests on a wider variety of genres. These handwritten essays were all taken from the same final exam in which students were to write a truncated, persuasive, or argumentative essay. Had we used descriptive essays as well as informative essays, we would have probably been able to find a wider variety of features and maybe more conclusive results. And also, of course, we need to test on both the free and paid AI detection programs to really see which features themselves are the most likely to contribute to false detection of AI generation. So thank you very, very much for your time and attention, especially for those of us who are having rather later nights than fit our usual schedule. Please feel free to ask me any questions you want now or to contact any member of our team at any point. And we are always happy to discuss this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wakid, excuse me. Are there questions for Dr. Wakid?